15 starts now. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the First and Tuna podcast. I'm your host, the biggest of tunas, and you have found your Northern California, Central California, wherever you are in California, podcast that covers not just the Rams, but we also do the Raiders, Niners, and Chargers. Why? Because that's what all my friends root for, and I want them all here in one place, one time. We cover those four teams, not just for the football nerd like me, but for the football noob alike, trying to teach you guys something new every single week, so that way you love the game as much as us nerds do. What I got for you guys this week, so we're going to recap real quickly the week that was. We're going to look at that playoff picture again, compliments of our artist, Corn Doggy. If you have not followed our artist that does all the cute little graphics on the show every single week, his links are going to be in the description below. And then finally, we're cranking out articles on the blog. Link to that's in the description below as well. I hope you guys are enjoying the content in the First and Tuna community. Let's keep this train rolling. As we look at the playoff picture, we are going to break down some scenarios for each team. Every team is still alive, obviously, with the Niners being number one. No brainer. Rams are still in the hunt. Technically, even after this week, the Chargers and the Raiders are both still in the playoff hunt. We're going to show you why and how. What a week it was. So I already wrote my letter to Santa just because I was super sad. My team lost again. The Niners won again, and I don't like that. I don't like that my least favorite team in the league that I cover on this podcast keeps winning. But I mean, someone's got to win because two of the teams that we cover, they keep losing in spectacular fashion. We'll just put it that way. The big story right now across the NFL, let's look at some big picture stuff, right? For the Rams lost to the Ravens, number one team in the AFC, in overtime, in a amazing punt return, walk-off touchdown. It sucks. I hate it. I'm sad about it. That didn't last long, though. 24 hours later, Monday Night Football, Giants-Packers. Packers are in the driver's seat for the number 6 seed, the wild card spot. All they got to do is just win out the season. They control their own destiny. What do? They don't just walk into New York and just get a win, though. You don't do that with Tommy Cutlets, with Tommy DeVito at quarterback for the New York Giants, the Italian stallion. I like to say one thing, us fans of the Los Angeles Rams, we thank you, Tommy DeVito. We wish you and your family health and wealth. The Italian stallion himself led the Giants to an underdog victory over the Packers with a last-second field goal in the fourth quarter. Awesome stuff. What that does has big ramifications for the wild card race in NFC. We are going to break that down as well. Already covered it. Rams lost. Don't at me. I hate it. They played well. They took the number one team in the AFC down to the wire. Loved seeing it. We are going to break that down on what that means for the outlooks with the last 4 games of the season as the Rams make their playoff push. 49ers took care of business against the Seahawks, pretty much making it look like easy work in a game where they swept the Seahawks for the season, but then ended in a fight where more ejections happened. DK Metcalf did more sign language, and to my knowledge, he has never won a game where he's done sign language as a touchdown celebration. So maybe not repping the ASL community well, because at least win a game for them, man. Like, you're killing me here, Smalls. Chargers, the week for them, been rough. Another loss. And then an even bigger loss within that loss, kind of like Russian nesting dolls of losses. They lost quarterback Justin Herbert for the season with a fractured finger. Hate to see it, especially in a year where it's been historic numbers of backup quarterbacks having to take over for long terms for a lot of teams across the league. Chargers are kind of spiraling right now, technically still in the playoff race, and we're going to break down how. And then last but not least, the Raiders played in a game that was the most low-scoring affair in history since the Chargers game last week. So back-to-back weeks, the two teams that we cover were in pretty historically low-scoring affairs. And I will talk a little bit about if I think, was it great defenses or was it poor just overall offenses? In that one, again, another team technically still alive. They're going to need a lot of help moving forward. We will break that down in the playoff picture section. Apart from that, though, the big debate right now, we kind of alluded to it last week. I went on a rant about why I think Brock Purdy definitely is an MVP candidate, and it stays true. He had another strong outing. The conversation right now is Brock Purdy the leader for the MVP race? Is it Dak Prescott because he's been shining? Jalen Hurts has probably fallen off a little bit. Lamar Jackson has been coming on stronger. He's had a great season. People forget about his rushing stats because they look at his passing stats and it looks kind of down, but they forget how active of a rusher he is. And if you're counting Purdy as an MVP candidate, you gotta count Lamar in there as well. Kind of same scenario happening where he seems to be running the system very well and efficiently. If you guys have been following all season, you know we don't do hot takes. We're not ESPN, but I'm not changing my tune on the Purdy situation. But you do have to take into consideration the best player on his offense. Like if we're saying Purdy is an MVP candidate, why isn't it Christian McCaffrey an MVP candidate? The conversation that's happening around, hey, who should be the MVP? It's not so much which quarterback's playing the best. It's overall, because there's so many quarterbacks hurt, and historically it seems to be like a down year for quarterbacks in general. Statistically, we really need to look at non-quarterbacks to win MVP. It typically never happens. The last time it has happened was Adrian Peterson from the Vikings, running back, winning like 10, 11 years ago. But historically, this is like a quarterback-centric award. That being said, my quote-unquote hot take, if we're going to say Purdy's the MVP candidate, why isn't Christian McCaffrey? If being the most valuable player in the league means you're also the most valuable player on your team, I don't think that's true without Christian McCaffrey. He seems to be the core part of that engine of an offense that keeps the train rolling. If McCaffrey isn't there, I mean, also if Debo isn't there, you know, it looks very different, and I get it. Christian McCaffrey is the catalyst there. So I really think he should be getting top 5 considerations. Hell, even Tyreek Hill needs to be getting top 5 considerations for MVP. Just looking at his stats, looking at the impact that he has helping the Dolphins win as many games as they have this year. That's been a big debate right now. Would love to hear what you guys think. Comment below who's your MVP so far this season. All right, so this week we're going to jump into the playoffs head first. We're gonna skip the top dog section, and we're gonna skip the noob section until next week. I really want to dive into some things playoff related. We got a bunch of scenarios, and I want to revisit some of our narratives that we've had coming into the season, see how they're playing out so far as we head into the final month of the regular season. Let's start with number 1. 49ers secure the number 1 spot in the NFC, tied with the best record in the league with the Baltimore Ravens at 10-3, and then tied with Dallas and Philadelphia as well. But now having the tiebreaker over those 2 other teams that are fighting for the number 1 spot in the conference, which technically kind of gives them a leg up, that if they end up tied with a record with Philadelphia or Dallas by the end of the season, they're going to have the number 1 spot because they beat both teams, and pretty handily too. My opinion, everyone's opinion, it's not a hot take. They're the best team in football. They're the most complete. They're the most dominant. They've had the most consistent level of play, especially in dominant wins. They have the biggest track record of just whooping on everybody, whether it's a poor team or some of the best teams. Recently, whooping on Philadelphia. About a month and a half, 2 months ago, they beat up Dallas pretty handily in their win. Like I said, so protecting the Niners, which is great since they've had a great season so far. Even if Philadelphia or Dallas win out the rest of the season, they're gonna stay in the number 1 spot. So 49ers' destiny is in their own hands. They don't have to rely on some weird tiebreakers to have home field advantage with the number 1 seed, but then also to have the first round bye. So that's huge for them. Plain and simple. 49ers went out. If they have the best record in the NFC, as long as they don't lose the playoffs, the road to the Super Bowl goes through Santa Clara. Huge advantage to them. Sticking with the NFC, though, Rams lost to Baltimore. Sucks, blows, I hate it. But Green Bay lost too. Thank you again, Tommy DeVito. Why does that matter? Look at the records. Rams are still 1 game behind Green Bay. They didn't go 2 games behind if Green Bay had won. The bad part, Vikings won, which means Green Bay and Minnesota are staying where they are right now. On top of that, the Vikings have a tiebreaker over the Rams, which kind of sucks because currently they have more wins in the NFC than the Rams do. So what does that mean? At the end of the season, if they have the same record, right now Minnesota would go in before the Rams because of more wins in the conference. At least that's the way I understood it. What needs to happen for the Rams to get closer to actually securing one of these playoff spots by the end of the year? They need to beat the Commanders, obviously, this week. They need Green Bay to lose to Tampa Bay, which right there would automatically bump Green Bay out of that spot, put the Rams in right behind the Minnesota Vikings. Even if Minnesota loses their game, they're still going to have the spot in front of the Rams because of that tiebreaker I talked about before. That's what Rams are paying attention to right now, beating the Commanders and then paying attention to that Green Bay-Tampa Bay game. That's super important for those last two spots at NFC, because you got to take it into consideration. You've still got New Orleans and Atlanta trying to get those last two spots as well. All three of those teams are actually tied for first place in their division with a losing record. So it's kind of a clusterfuck that's happening in there. Green Bay losing to a New York team that's not the best on paper at all. I think they just happen to get hot and perform above their normal level because it was prime time. Tampa Bay is not a bad team. I don't feel like, neither is Green Bay, so that's going to be a good game. It's not a pushover for either one. It's going to have major playoff implications for both those guys and for like 4 or 5 other teams. So that's why I'm going to be paying attention to this weekend. And then looking at the AFC, you've got the Ravens in the number 1 spot. I kind of can talk about the Chargers and Raiders as one collective nucleus because of their situations being so similar and the fact they play each other this week. So effectively, everything I'm talking about right now is going to get solved by the end of Thursday night. Similar record. They're in the same spot. They need the same amount of help from other teams winning, losing in a certain order throughout the rest of the season for them to make it. I believe this is the same for the Raiders, but the Chargers can be in this playoff picture as early as week 17. From what I've seen, the scenarios I've played with, it didn't seem to be anything sooner just because of their record. But as early as week 17, the week before the season finale, Chargers need to win out. One more loss at any week, you're done, out of the playoffs. They need a lot of help, though, compared to what we just talked about with the Rams needing, one win here from one team, one loss here in 2 weeks from another team. Chargers' playoff hopes are dependent on Buffalo losses, Denver losses, and then a mixture over the next few weeks from Houston, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, winning and or losing in certain weeks against certain opponents. It's really messy. I'm not going to create conspiracy web explaining it all. Just know that before week 17, it's not going to be them in the playoff hunt. And it's not just them winning out. They need to win out, and they need a lot of help from like 6 other teams. Very same situation for the Raiders. They have to win out, can't lose any more games, and they need help from all those 6 other teams. It's basically, for both these teams, it's who can get to 9-8 and just hope and pray. Because just having a 9-8 record isn't going to automatically get you in. There's going to be, honestly, I think there's going to be 4 to 5 teams in that cluster just all at 9-8. And it's going to be down to, hey, a head-to-head tiebreaker or more wins in your division type tiebreaker. Someone's going to get left out with a similar record. So you got to race to 9-8 and hope for the best for both Raiders and Chargers. And like I said, they go head-to-head with the Chargers this Thursday night. I'm really hoping for a good game. I don't know who has the upper hand. If Justin Herbert was healthy, I told you my thought process. I go based off coach and quarterback. Quarterback thing's gone now for the Chargers, kind of leaves them in the same spot. Raiders have an interim head coach. Chargers should have an interim head coach. Yeah, the loser of this game is effectively out of the playoffs. And our conversations on this podcast about that losing team the rest of the season is most likely going to be moving ahead towards looking at who the potential next coach is going to be, what that draft is going to look like, and what the offseason moves can be to help this team get better next season. We'll see how it goes. That's our current playoff picture. It's going to keep getting murky for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then by the time we're in the last week of the season, it's going to be very clear. There's going to be a handful of teams on either side of the row fighting for a win and get in type situation. And this last month is going to be a lot of fun seeing who gets in. But let's go ahead and stick with the Raiders and Chargers. I'm going to kind of talk about them synonymously since they're in very similar situations, it seems like, in our narrative. This next section, typically we look ahead for what's going to happen for these teams in the next week. I want to revisit some narratives since we got 1 month left in the regular season. I pride my show on talking about narratives, why things are important, keeping the big picture in mind, because we can get so lost in the week-to-week changing opinions. Like just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I said on this podcast that I can't see any other team besides Detroit, San Francisco, or Philly not being those top 3 spots for the playoffs. It's completely flipped now. Niners are number 1. Dallas is hunting at number 3. And I think Detroit is at number 2. No, backwards. Dallas is number 2. Detroit's number 3. Eagles are down at number 5. So things change like that. I want to try to keep the narratives in the forefront of our mind so that you can kind of understand the story for each team as they're playing out throughout the entire season to see, hey, are these stories holding up? Are these stories changing? Or are these just hot takes? I don't know. Let's visit. So keeping with the Chargers. Coming into the season, they were talked about as a potential Super Bowl contender. Herbert, MVP, dark horse at worst. He just got paid. He's super talented. He's a franchise quarterback. They have one of the most talented rosters. Their only downside was they have questionable game management, and decisions in games have led to close game losses. They're like 1-10 or some junk like that, and one score losses the last 2 seasons. It's been Coach Staley's thorn in his side the entire time. Their season started off that way, so all the narratives were kind of true. Justin Herbert, great stats, the team's talented, but they're not winning because of these close games. But since the midway point, things have kind of spiraled. Injuries have mounted, and the losses have mounted in not just a close fashion anymore. We're talking about damn near embarrassing fashion, not good football fashion. Winning a game was at 6-3 against New England 2 weeks ago, in a game that's not touted as, hey, great defensive ball, like this is like you're playing against the 85 Bears. This is just poor execution mixed with bad weather, putting a poor performance on the field. And I know Chargers fans are sick of it. I hear about it all the time, week in and week out from my friends, and it's not a good feeling to watch a team that you care about seem to not care, at least from the management perspective or the coaching perspective. And then to put the cherry on top and what has been an ugly season for the Chargers, they lose their MVP hopeful in Justin Herbert. Not that he was in an MVP race right now, but that's how he's viewed as important for this team. They lost the game to Denver. They never had the lead. It didn't really seem like they were ever going to take the lead in that game. They didn't really seem like it have an identity. And then, like I said, losing Herbert for the rest of the season is just kind of putting the nail in the coffin, what it seems like. They're still technically in the hunt. They can prove that this Thursday with the win over the Raiders. But with just how much negativity is hanging over this franchise right now, and now the conversation has shifted far beyond, just firing the coach like we've talked about way too often on this podcast. It's shifted straight to how do we get rid of ownership? A lot of fans booed the Spanos family during halftime of this past game when they were honoring Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates into the Ring of Honor. The second they brought up the Spanos family in their speeches, they're just booing them. They don't seem to like the Spanos family. It's going to be a real interesting deep dive that I do in the postseason or in the offseason, talking about the Chargers and their ownership woes the past 2 to 3 decades. But like I said, going forward, they got the Raiders this week. They can somehow get into the wild card. I think that'd be great for momentum for the players. I think no matter what, I think they're getting rid of the coach at the end of the season. I think right now these guys, they're going to keep playing hard for a lot of reasons. Obviously, these guys are leaders on their team. They take pride as a professional. Guys that may be on other teams next year, they're playing for audition tape, showing what money they're worth to maybe get a contract somewhere else. Wish them the best of luck. I hate seeing that for them, man. It's been a dark cloud of a season for the Chargers. So far, I say these season narratives on the negative side have held up. The worries that Chargers fans had coming into the season, unfortunately, played out perfectly for what the worst case scenario was. When it comes to the positive narratives, obviously didn't happen. Exact same record at 5-8. They still have a chance, pushing to 9-8. Like I said, with all the weird stuff that can happen, get into the wild card as well. Little bit different scenario though. They've already fired their head coach, and let's dive into the narratives that were playing out coming into the season. Big questions surrounding them that we've talked about. Is McDaniels capable of putting together a successful season now that he's in year 2 and creating a team in his image that he wants to lead? Answer was a resounding fuck no. Getting fired halfway through the season, putting interim coach Antonio Pierce into the lead role now. Immediately following it up that week with a big win over the New York Giants, blowing them out. Other big narratives coming into this one. Is Jimmy Garoppolo going to be the franchise quarterback now that they got Derek Carr out of there after a decade of playing? Trading away Darren Waller, was that a good idea? And then can they make enough noise in AFC West? Right now it's been a resounding no, and no for all those being positive narratives. getting rid of Carr for Garoppolo. Carr hasn't had great success in New Orleans himself. Some of the negatives that Raiders fans have talked about him for years seem to be playing out in New Orleans as well. Jimmy Garoppolo got benched a few weeks ago for rookie Aiden O'Connell, so the answer there is absolutely no. But seen some bright spots for O'Connell, so got a little bit of silver lining there. From backup quarterbacks that have been in the league for years, those guys are hit or miss on whether they can even, competently run an offense and get you to any kind of win. Aiden O'Connell has led them down the field competently, got some wins. I like what I see out of him. Obviously, getting a whole offseason under his belt to prepare as a starter is going to work wonders for him. You guys may have something there in Aiden O'Connell. Making noise in AFC West, I say that's been a no so far, just with the turmoil in turnover and coaching change, inconsistency in offense and defense, and just overall just having a bottom tier defense right now statistically. They're not obviously pushing for number one in AFC West. Pushing for a wild card spot's one thing. I think they were about 2 to 3 years removed after having a new leadership in charge, hopefully new ownership, revamping that roster, and hopefully infusing some good leadership in there to create an identity and for them to actually make some noise in AFC West. So overall, what it looks like, the narratives coming into the season have pretty much been debunked. None of the narratives that they were hoping for held up. McDaniels is gone. Garoppolo's not starting, not making any noise in the AFC West. So fortunately, it's been a dark cloud on this franchise that we cover as well. Thursday, let's see if lightning can strike or if the Raiders can create their own dark cloud. I'm sure there's a pirate reference in there somewhere. Let's shift. Rams. Coming into this season, sitting at 6-7, one game out from the wild card spot right now with a month to go. Already, they exceeded their win total from last year and the win expectancy about 2 to 3 weeks ago. Coming into this season, this team was looked at as extremely young, untalented on paper, and not a serious contender at all for any playoff spot. This was meant to be a rebuilding year because of a number of reasons. If you want the quick history, won a Super Bowl 2 years ago, cashed out big on big-name superstars to get there and succeed, knowing that the bill was going to come due over the next year or two by being cash poor, by letting some of these veteran names, these big-ticket guys, walk, having to pay dead cap space. To acquire some of those big-name guys, they used high draft capital to trade and acquire them. So what does that mean? You're not replenishing your now empty roster with big-name, ready-to-go guys or ready-to-go on paper guys out of the rookie class with the first, second, third round. The reason why the Rams were looked at as potentially a bottom-tier team was because they got a lot of rookies not out of the first or second round. Guys out of third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round having to play and start right away. Usually that's a recipe for disaster. Starting quarterback was injury-prone, looked at as potentially not finishing out the season. Knock on wood, because he has finished it so far. And on top of that, outside of playoffs, they're looked at as one of the teams to potentially be landing a top 5 pick because they may perform so badly this season. Let's look at where they stand right now. Yes, they're very rookie heavy. They've set some franchise records for a percentage of snaps played by rookies ever in a year. But these guys are, I don't want to say overachieving because that's implying that they're not meant to perform this well. These guys are playing in critical roles. They're every down players, whether it's offense, defense, or special teams. And they're performing at, some of them, Pro Bowl, if not all pro level. Let's take a look at some of these guys. Byron Young, we wrote an article on him. He's an every down player. He's an integral part of that defensive line. He's earned Rookie of the Week honors twice. Oh, no, correction, once. Puka won it twice. One of our other rookies. And he's flashed as one of the top rookie defenders in this class performing this season. Kobe Turner, defensive lineman, every down guy playing right next to Aaron Donald. He leads all rookies with sacks with, I believe, 5.5 this season. He's going to be a starter for years to come on this defense. Steve Avila, left guard. Some may say he's playing at a Pro Bowl level because he's came in, been extremely consistent, and been a large reason why the Rams' run game is as efficient as it has been. And then to top it off, the golden gem of the Rams draft, 5th round wide receiver Puka Nacua. over 1,000 yards as a rookie. He's breaking Rams franchise records. He's on track to potentially break the NFL rookie receiving yards record. And on top of that, he's a go-to guy in a year where Cooper Kupp, our star wide receiver, has been a little bit hurt. Puka Nacua has stepped in, been a potential number one guy, and has never looked back. And he's super fun to watch. That narrative right there of these rookies holding back a Rams team, completely debunked. It's been a positive narrative for them moving forward. The other one where we're talking about the Rams potentially only winning 3 or 4 games, having a top 5 pick, we've already been past that for about 2 or 3 weeks, sitting at 6 wins, on track. Hopefully they can win out the rest of the season and be at 10 wins. Most likely, I think this is a 9-8 season. I think they sneak into the last spot in the wild card, number 7, meaning that we'll be playing whoever the number 2 team is, first round of the playoffs. So coming into this season, the narratives seem to be all negative for this team. They've all been completely debunked as we've got 4 games left. Super happy. Every single week right now has been kind of taking it as it is and enjoying the season, because when you're not expecting the most and you get this performance right now, it feels really good as a fan to be able to sit there and be like, okay, I'm really happy with this coaching staff. It's great to root for a team that's competent. And you don't have to worry about some of the things that some other other fan bases are unfortunately dealing with. Vamos Rams. And last but not least, because they are the number 1 team in the NFL right now, the San Francisco 49ers. Let's take a look at their narratives. Right now they're sitting at 10-3 with the best record. Preseason coming in. Everyone knows these guys are loaded. Like your favorite nachos, right? The questions coming in were like first world problems. Can they stay healthy? Because if they're healthy, this is the scariest roster to have to play against for anybody in the NFL. It's been proven true easily. We've talked about them ad nauseum already with the playoff scenarios. All they got to do is just stay healthy and win out. They're the number 1 team. The biggest one, which is playing out right before our eyes, is Purdy the real deal. If you're unfamiliar with the drama that was unfolding last season with the 49ers quarterback situation, as talented as they are, as great as their offense is, the quarterbacks seem to be the one piece, the one cog in the machine kind of holding them back. Even as far as 2 years ago where they lost in the NFC Championship game to the Rams. I love bringing that shit up. It makes me happy. Jimmy Garoppolo was that weak piece in that offense where the game ended in a turnover, securing the game for the Rams. Coming into last year, it seemed to be a toss-up between, is it going to be Jimmy Garoppolo or is it going to be Trey Lance leading this offense? And it kind of shuffled between the two of them because of injuries. Both ended up getting injured, which brought in Brock Purdy halfway through the season. He got behind the wheel, never looked back, never gave up the keys. Super commendable, regardless of how you feel about the guy. Like, to be able to step into a situation like that with all this pressure and not fuck it up, onions. The kid's got onions. How is it playing out right before our eyes? Like I said, the question literally is Purdy the real deal? Or was that win streak last year just to kind of heat of the moment, ride the wave momentum, and just kind of stay out of the way and don't fuck it up? They came into the season, spurted off a win streak. They had that little 3-game losing streak, but now they're back on track and dominating. Big part of that is from his performances. The whole MVP situation, I love how Malik put it, and we had a conversation about it earlier. You know, how do you put into words that even though he's playing at an extremely high level, maybe he's not the MVP in some people's eyes, and like, it's not just the stats thing. It's kind of, you know it when you see it on film type of thing. And the way to put it is he's a point guard. He's an elite point guard. Like, he's dishing out assists. He's making sure his players are in the right positions. He's doing his job super well, and he's going to be rewarded for it. Versus some other guys are more of a scorer, like more like a Kyrie Irving. They're better with the ball in their hands. They're the guy that's the weapon. So whereas Brock Purdy just knows how to utilize all his weapons the right way, which isn't bad. Like I said last week, you can be a game manager and an MVP candidate. Both can be parallel and extremely true. That's very long-winded for me saying this narrative is holding up. It's playing out. We don't need the last 4 weeks to answer this question for us. Dude's the real deal, at least for the San Francisco 49ers. I'm not going to play the game of, oh, will he be good elsewhere? He's not elsewhere. So what are we talking about? He's on the 49ers. They're 10-3. They're Super Bowl favorites right now. There's no other answer you need besides that. The only thing to pay attention to that can extremely weird. Did I say extremely weird? That can extremely knock them out of sorts, injuries. It seems to bite them every single year. I hate seeing that. It hurts me to do this, but knock on wood for the 49ers. You hate to see someone key like a Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey go out with a season-ending injury. They've avoided that so far. If they can avoid that and keep that narrative out of their minds, it's hard to imagine any team beating them on the way to the Super Bowl. That being said, they've got a matchup against the Cardinals coming up. Divisional games get weird, but in terms of safe games, this should be the safest one on the rest of their schedule. Followed up, they've got a Ravens game on Christmas. That's going to be a great matchup, a potential Super Bowl preview. And then following up, I still have my eyes on that Week 18 game. Something weird about that one. Something about that's weird. It's going to be an important game for one reason or another, and I can't wait to see why. That's our narratives for the 49ers. A lot of them, if not all of them, have held up true so far, and they are your NFL favorites. I got some playoff scenarios done for you guys. We revisited some of the narratives that I told you were the most important ones to pay attention to every single team week one, how they playing out so far. I wish some of these weren't true, man, for like the Raiders and Chargers, just because you hate seeing that kind of ineptitude within an organization that holding back a team. It's one thing if you're losing games just because, a guy dropped the ball, unfortunate turnovers, but when it's like the business side of it itself is just not seem to be caring about the putting forth the best product on the field. Super unfortunate, and I know it breaks a lot of fans' hearts. It sucks, but there you go. Give you guys something to look forward to outside of your own team this upcoming week. Look forward to see who's going to be knocked out of the playoff race from the Raiders and the Chargers. And looking to see my Rams catch up a little bit in that playoff race. It's FTP towards the Packers, if you know what that stands for. It's what I got for you guys. Like, subscribe, tell everybody that you love us. And I will see you next week. Bye.